First reading.
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Environment Protection Authority Bill be now read a first time. At the appropriate time, I intend to move that the bill be referred to the Local Government and Environment Committee with an instruction that the committee report finally to the House on or before the 28th of March 2011, and that the committee have the authority to meet as required at any time while the House is sitting, except during oral questions and during any evening on a day of which there has been a sitting of the House, and on a Friday in a week in which there has been a sitting of the House, despite Standing Orders 187 and 190 1B and C. Mr Speaker, this bill is an important part of the government's program to strengthen New Zealand's environment management systems. It's about central government providing stronger leadership on environmental regulation. It's about a balanced approach of growing the economy but underpinned by sound environmental systems. It's about an efficient public service where we group like activities together under one roof, and it's about ensuring the integrity, the independence and consistency in the way we organise our environmental institutions. The need for this bill is a product of our time. There was a stage in our development when environmental issues were fringe, when environmental considerations were an optional extra, and when only a few public policy issues had an environmental dimension. The reality is that many of our really challenging issues we face this century are environmental, such as the limiting of emissions and a water-constrained world. We need better and stronger public institutions to help us manage these challenges as a nation. In the 1970s, we got our first Environment Minister. In the 1980s, the Environment Ministry. And just as there are clear separations of responsibility in the economic sphere between the Treasury, the Reserve Bank and Audit New Zealand, so too in the environment sphere there are differing roles. The thinking behind this bill, Mr Speaker, is one where the Environment Ministry is the brains trust, the policy think tank and the advisor to government, whereas the EPA is the arm's length regulator of environmental standards, and where the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment is that of Environmental Auditor. Internationally, the notion of Environmental Protection Authority is not new. Such authorities exist in most OECD jurisdictions, like at state level in Australia and in the USA and the European Union. The idea in a New Zealand context came out of National's 2006 Blue-Green Vision discussion document. Following public consultation, it became part of National's 2008 environment policy. Part of the rationale for the EPA is a view that our RMA system of environmental regulation is too devolved. It does not make sense for a small country of 4.5 million people to have every environmental issue re-litigated 78 times with each council. It's also underpinned by a view that some major consents are nationally significant, and rather than being processed by territorial regional councils, they should be dealt with by a national consenting authority. The bill before the House establishes the new Environment Protection Authority as a Crown entity under the Crown Entities Act 2004 with its own appointed board. The bill disestablishes the Environmental Risk Management Authority and transfers all its functions and powers under the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act to the new EPA. The new authority incorporates the transitional EPA established within the Ministry for the Environment as part of this government's first phase of RMA reforms introduced in our first 100 days as a government. We wanted to get that new national consenting function up and running as quickly as possible. The value of this is reinforced with there being over $5 billion of resource consents currently before it. The House should be encouraged by the progress that the transitional EPA has made to date. 4 major consents are currently before the authority: the Tahara 2 geothermal project near Taupo, the Waterview connection in Auckland, Transmission Gully here in Wellington, and the new Wiri Men's Prison at Manukau. I contrast with the progress made by the EPA with Tahara of issuing an interim decision within 6.5 months and their final decision within 9 months, with the 15-year-long battle over the Wellington inner-city bypass, or the 12-year fiasco over the Whangamata Marina. The new processes are proving robust and timely and well managed by the EPA. It was not possible to resolve the important detail of that new authority in the tight time frame of the 100-day first phase of RMA reforms, and so this bill presents the detailed work of designing this new authority's form and functions. The bill achieves this by amending the Climate Change Response Act 2002, the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act 1996 and the Resource Management Act 1991 to allow for the relevant functions and powers from those acts to transfer to the new EPA. I ask the House to note that it is not the Government's intention to alter the substance of functions carried out under those three acts. What changes is the body that is responsible for them. The bill transfers some administrative functions of the emissions trading scheme from both the Ministry of Economic Development and the Ministry for the Environment to the EPA. This includes the emissions trading register and the allocation of New Zealand units for industry and for agriculture. The administration of the forestry portion of the ETS appropriately remains with the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry. It is my intention that the EPA will also assume responsibility for the regulatory functions necessary under the Imports and Export Orders and the Ozone Layer Protection Act and their regulations. Regulatory changes to give effect to this will likely occur alongside the progress of the bill. The Government is also working on legislation regarding New Zealand's Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ. New Zealand's marine environment is an integral part of our nation and contributes significantly to our economy and environment, and obviously is important to our fishing, aquaculture, oil and gas, tourism, transport and telecommunications industries. However, there is currently no way to effectively manage the environmental impact of activities within the EEZ. The Government is determined to ensure that New Zealand's marine environment is properly protected as we expand development in that area. It's not only the environmental risk we run, the gap in regulation leads to uncertainty and could constrain future economic growth from New Zealand's extensive marine resources. It is therefore my intention that the EPA be responsible for the permitting functions that will arise from that proposed EEZ legislation. A further function of the EPA under Clause 12 will be the undertaking of environmental assessments under the Antarctic Environmental Protection Act 1994 that currently resides within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Again, I think most members would subscribe to the view that the EPA, rather than Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, is the better home for this role. The bill quite deliberately creates a separation between the Minister and regulatory functions. I note, for instance, that bringing before the House amendments to moderate the ETS, there were a number of thoughtful submissions that sought greater separation over the management of the registry by the Minister and our decisions over the ETS in regards to prosecution and non-compliance. This bill refines the administration of the ETS to achieve this. This broader issue of ministers being close to policy but at arm's length to regulatory functions is generally good public policy and is being applied in this bill. I wish to acknowledge the Maori Party for their support for this bill. The capacity of National and the Maori Party to work together on important environmental legislation reflects a common interest in progressing reforms that carefully balance economic and environment interests. Mr Speaker, to summarise this bill, it brings together under one Crown authority a range of environmental regulatory functions that currently partially reside within the Ministry for the Environment, the Environmental Risk Management Authority, the Ministry of Economic Development and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, as well as providing stronger national direction around roles that currently reside with our 86 regional and territorial authorities. This bill is a balanced environmental approach. It reinforces the importance of scientific skills in good environmental decision making. It recognises the importance of efficiency in environmental regulation to our economy. The time for a comprehensive EPA for New Zealand has come. Mr Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.
The question is that